2024 is not exactly shaping up to be Ubisoft's year. So far, they've had two massive failures. Earlier this year, we had the release of Skull and Bones, which struggled to bring players in, according to this article from The Gamer. And this article came out 9 days after the game launched. And to further highlight the massive failure that is Skull and Bones, the game went on sale for $10 at Best Buy, right after the CEO described the game as being quadruple A. How's that working out for you? Oh, not very well? Not surprised. And then we have Star Wars Outlaws, which is the second massive failure, and even Ubisoft has had to come out and admit that this game is underperforming massively. Outlaws is a video game that is rife with problems, from bad character design to broken stealth mechanics, which I find absolutely hilarious considering Ubisoft has been implementing stealth mechanics ever since they released the original Assassin's Creed game back in November of 2007. As if this wasn't bad enough, Ubisoft stock over the last 3 years has dropped 85.27% of its value. And I'm sure all of these have played into the decision of going and delaying Assassin's Creed Shadow from November of this year to February of 2025. The official Assassin's Creed Twitter account posted this on September 25th of 2024. Dear players, Assassin's Creed Shadows is a dream project for us, finally bringing the series to feudal Japan with many features developed with our community in mind, such as parkour or the renewed stealth. Now, I find this statement to be rather odd considering the fact that parkour and stealth has been a core mechanic in Assassin's Creed since 2007. Now, yes, I need to point out that for the most part, the more recent Assassin's Creed games have moved away from parkour as well as stealth. And it's because of these mechanic changes that I've largely moved on from playing Assassin's Creed. I love the first 3 games, they are great. But once we get to Origins is where we have a dramatic shift in gameplay. And for me, it's because of these shifting game mechanics that I've stopped playing Assassin's Creed, because it went from a great stealth parkour game to just a generic RPG, which was not something I was interested in, so I just simply stopped playing. This is an ambitious addition to the franchise, a rich experience that can be lived through the eyes of 2 unique protagonists, but we realize we need more time to polish and refine the experience, pushing further some of our key features. At the end of the day, parkour, stealth, and assassination is all key features of Assassin's Creed. Well, at least they used to be. So I don't understand why these key features have not been fully developed yet. I understand the idea of making improvements. After all, you make iterative improvements to your mechanics. Ultimately, what this leads me to believe is that this game is in the same sad shape as Star Wars Outlaws, a game that should never have been released in the shape that it was in. But as we all know, when it comes to current year video games, the players are really just the beta testers. As such, we've made the decision to postpone the release date to February 14th of 2025. The game will release on a broad range of platforms, including Steam at launch. Additionally, pre-orders will be refunded and all future pre-orders will be granted the first expansion for free. Ultimately, this statement does not bode well for this game. Now, this game is supposed to be, for the most part, done, and they have an additional, 3+ months at this point to go and refine/fix the issues with the game. Now, another motivation that they could have potentially pushed the game is because of the bad financials for 2024, and they're hoping that maybe this game will bolster their earnings for 2025, but I don't think they should be holding their breath at this point. Now, Assassin's Creed is a massive franchise, and I have no doubt that this game will do well, but the question is, how well is it going to do? They've had thousands of people working on this game. And with 2 massive failures for 2024, they really do need to have this game perform well. Because if they don't, well, it's probably going to be curtains for Ubisoft. The question is, how much further can their stock go and fall? And how much further can that stock fall before the company goes and folds? On September 25th, the CEO of Ubisoft had this to say: "I want to reaffirm that we are an entertainment-first company, creating games for the broadest possible audience. And our goal is not to push a specific agenda. We remain committed to creating games that everyone can enjoy." This is 100% damage control because yes, they have been pushing an ideology. They have been pushing an agenda. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. Focus on queer representation in games. And to be quite frank, I honestly don't give two shits whether they have gay representation in a game or not. It's when you're making it one of your primary focuses. That's where it becomes an issue. Because you are literally pushing an agenda at that point. And on top of that, I simply just don't get the fascination with drag queens. And for whatever reason, this is a trend that has been pervasive amongst large corporations, bringing in drag queens for some reason. I simply just don't get it. Another such example is the fact that they have a mentorship program that blatantly excludes men. And if Ubisoft wasn't pushing an agenda, then why would they go and hire an LGBTQ activist as a consultant for the game? Somebody who goes and specializes in transgenerational sex. You can do the math on that one. And leave it to Paul Forbes to massively miss the mark with the statement. It is embarrassing Ubisoft is admitting they are actually rattled by the culture war stuff over Outlaws and Shadows. And as I pointed out in my reply to Paul, they have literally lost 57.20% of their value year to date. They have every reason to be rattled, Paul. They are hemorrhaging money at this point. But ultimately, if Paul had his way, Ubisoft would go and triple down, which would ultimately be a death sentence for their company. Because at some point in time, you have to realize with this much failure under your belt that you have to pivot, you have to change directions, or you're going to find your company going out of business, which is what Ubisoft is heading towards. Paul then goes and follows up with a tweet. Outlaws could have starred a guy who looks like Han Solo, and Shadows could have starred a guy who looks like Jin Sakai. And I don't think it would meaningfully change the futures of either of those games. And for the most part, I don't necessarily disagree with what Paul said here, at least when it comes to Star Wars Outlaws. If this game came out as is with a male protagonist, it would just as much be a hot mess, narratively as well as mechanically. Just because a game has a male lead in it doesn't exempt it from being bad, and trust me, there's been plenty of bad games featuring a male lead. And all you have to do is take a look at any of the Alone in the Dark games that came out after the 90s. They're awful. But by that same token, when you put more of an emphasis on your activism rather than gameplay and enjoyment of said game, well, that's also going to be a huge issue as well. And it shouldn't come as a surprise when the general audience and gamers go and reject it. And at this point, all this failure has culminated into this. The Ubisoft board is launching an investigation into the company's struggles. And the fact that this is happening really shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody at this point. At least to anyone who's been halfway paying attention and hasn't been buried neck deep in ideology. It has been announced that Ubisoft's executive committee and board of directors will launch an investigation and review of the company. The news came via company financial statement and update, which includes the delay of Assassin's Creed Shadows and the announcement that Star Wars Outlaws underperformed. The statement reads, "In light of recent challenges," and by challenges, they mean the abysmal failures that have been their last two games, the massive financial collapse of the company, and the fact that they just generally fucked up. But I digress. We acknowledge the need for greater efficiency while delighting players. As a result, beyond the first important short-term actions undertaken, the Executive Committee, under the supervision of the Board of Directors, is launching a review aimed at further improving our execution, notably in the player-centric approach. Being that Ubisoft is a gaming company after all, you think that the player-centric approach would always be number one, but apparently not. And accelerate our strategic path towards a higher performing model to benefit our stakeholders and shareholders. Now, I want to point something out. The last paragraph is the very thing that all the activists like Paul Tassi have been zeroing in on. Finally, let me address some of the polarizing comments around Ubisoft lately. I want to reaffirm that we are an entertainment company, blah, 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 blah. I've already read this. But notice how everybody has been skipping the first paragraph about them being investigated by their board of directors. I kind of feel like this is burying the lead here. And to further illustrate this point, we have this coming from the gamer. Ubisoft then follows up with a statement with a rather bizarre claim explaining that it doesn't agree with the polarizing comments. And the only way that you'd find this statement as bizarre is if you are buried neck deep into the ideology because you agree with it. And when the fact that the CEO is now quote unquote rejecting it, of course to you it's going to be a bizarre claim. At this point, Ubisoft is screwed. And if they actually survive past 2025, I'm legitimately going to be surprised. Anyway, folks, that is my take. What is yours? Leave a comment down below. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Popping up right about now is another video you can go and check out. I'll catch you next time, folks.